looking at things again, because it is really difficult to collect and hold in our minds all of these things, and yet this is extremely important as to the nature of ourselves. Last week we looked at a subject that one can only consider as bizarre, yet natural and reasonable. And namely, are people who claim to have a spiritual or sometimes visionary experience under the influence of a hallucinogenic drug. Now, of course, that's enough to get a lot of the people, running out of the monasteries and all of these things. But it's different, because we're talking about something that is naturally built in to us as human beings. Come on in. Just walk right in and make yourself comfortable and just sit down. Don't worry about that. In addition, we discussed what part a hallucinogenic drug might play in mental conditions in which people are considered to have dementia or schizophrenia. And in addition to that, we looked at the number of scientists who have taken hallucinogenics in order to understand the workings of the subatomic invisible world that we in reality inhabit, but really don't know that it's there. Two contemporary scientists in particular that we looked at were Rick Strassman, who is an MD, and Jeremy Narby, who is an anthropologist. Both authored books that brought to light the involvement of hallucinogenics, or drugs, if you wish, in life experiences that open an understanding and reality beyond what we consider normal. It's a very touchy subject to discuss. It really is, because there's so much trouble with drugs and young people, and you never, ever want to put such a thing in a positive light. And of course, we're not, because what I'm talking about here is something that is naturally secreted into the brain by a gland. But anyhow, we take a look at Rick Strassman, and he authored the book DMT, The Spiritual Module, a doctor's revolutionary approach into the near-death experiences and mystical experiences. And Jeremy Narby wrote The Cosmic Serpent, DNA, and the Origins of Knowledge. Now, both actually took mind-enhancing drugs. Now, but see, that's different than, people on the street or whatever. We're talking about professional people who are seeking something outside of the realm of the natural. They took these in order to see for themselves the bizarre world that exists right next to us. And in many instances is more real, in essence, than the one we see. Rick Strassman, on your left, over here, this is Rick Strassman, he opens up for discussion the possibility that it is the secretion of this drug DMT into the brain that brings a person into contact with higher realms, higher alien realms, if you mean. In other words, what he is saying is that his position is that is the DMT that is secreted by the pineal gland in the brain that is responsible for people having these exotic visionary experiences, what they call spiritual, heavy-duty spiritual experiences. Now, Jeremy Narby worked in the Amazon with shamans to determine how they could know which plants to combine to make healing medicines, which they do, and he took this ayahuasca, or ayahuasca, whatever. And he wrote this book because he had visions of winding stairs and serpents and twisted things and all of this, and came to the conclusion that it represented the DNA structure, and So then Jeremy Narby, in his book, The Cosmic Serpent, said what he is convinced of is that it is the DNA in these plants and the ayahuasca that tells the DNA in the shaman how to do this. So we looked into this because of the fact that what is considered a hallucinogenic illegal drug, DMT, is naturally produced in the human brain. It forms the basis of the ayahuasca that Narby ingested and is the center of Rick Strassman's book. So quickly I wanted to go over things and some things and then I'll have something really interesting to show you. But this is the summary definition of DMT. Dimethyltryptamine, which is right here, it's DMT containing plants, are commonly used in several South American shamanic practices. It is usually one of the main active constituents of the drink ayahuasca. And it says here that several speculative and yet untested hypotheses suggest that endogenous DMT produced in the human brain, now that's not untested, that's a fact, but is involved in certain psychological and neurological states. As DMT is naturally produced in small amounts in the brain, some believe it plays a role in promoting the visual effects of natural dreaming and near-death experiences and other mystical states. A biochemical mechanism for this was proposed by J.C. Calloway, who suggested in 1988 DMT might be connected with visual dream phenomena where brain DMT levels are periodically elevated to induced visual dreaming and possibly other natural states. So, I mean, you know, we're not talking about anything in this case that's illegal, because we're talking about a natural phenomenon. And the question that goes over and over in my brain was, what in the world is the purpose of creation, nature, God placing this hallucinogenic drug to be secreted into the brain? You know, what for what? One of the interesting people we discussed last week was Francis Crick. And Francis Crick discovered the DNA structure, probably one of the most renowned discoveries in science. And there he is, and it tells you he died in July '04. He was an English molecular biologist, physicist, most noted for being one of the co-discoverers of the structure of DNA in 1953. What a discovery. He, Watson, and Wilkins were awarded the 1962 Nobel Prize for Physiology for their discoveries concerning the molecular structure of nucleic acids and its significance for information transfer in living material. Well, you know, and how impressive is this? He taught and lectured and did all this stuff at Caius, C-A-I-U-S University in England. It's in Cambridge, England. And when he died, they put a stained glass window in the Great Hall of the university. And this is it. We looked at that last week. What a magnificent thing that is. How much of a genius and how much of a contributor to science was Francis Crick. But here's the shocker. Here's the shocker. The shocker is Francis Crick, Nobel Prize genius, was high on LSD when he discovered the secret of life. Okay? And it says, the Nobel Prize-winning father of modern genetics was under the influence of LSD when he first deduced the double helix structure of DNA nearly 50 years ago. What is so interesting about that is that this is exactly what happened to Jeremy Narby when he found the explanation for the shamans who create these healing drugs in the Amazon. And let's look at this one quick thing too with Dr. Crick or Mr. He died at 88. He told the scientists he often used small doses of LSD to boost his powers of thought. He said it was LSD, not the Eagles warm beer that helped him to unravel the structure of DNA, the discovery that won him the Nobel Prize. And you know what? What a quandary it leaves us in, because we know drugs are bad, we know nobody should take drugs, but, in controlled circumstances, by people who are searching in a scientific method, my goodness gracious, maybe that's where these secrets lie. Maybe you have to look beyond the 3 dimensions. You have to look beyond the 5 senses, And, these are, as I said, extremely prestigious things and have contributed so much to society and life and healing. Well, nonetheless, that's what he did. And we looked at some other people, and I just wanted to quickly run down the list of people who were hallucinating because of what they took. And I don't know what to say other than it's true, and here they are. This is Harvard professor Stephen Gould, died in 2002 of lung cancer. He was the author of many books on science and evolution, The Mismeasures of Man, and the massive 1,400-page opus, The Structure of Evolutionary Theory. While many obituaries marked Gould's passing, few mention that Gould had been using marijuana since 1982. And the next one. The next one is somebody you all know. Carl Sagan, who was a regular user of marijuana from the early 60s until his death in 96. Sagan was also best known for his ability to explain his complex ideas to the general public. Sagan was close friends with Harvard professor Leonard Grinspoon, and in an anonymous essay he wrote for Grinspoon's book, Sagan explained how cannabis used had on occasion inspired him to produce scientific papers which one later reclaimed. No, but you see this guy come on television when he was alive. He talked. And he knew what he was speaking of, and you can still see his programs or buy the DVDs, and he had a series called The Cosmos, which are but look, he was high. I don't know how to. But I've got to tell you this. I certainly can't say, well, you shouldn't say. This is a fact. Let's know. Here's Richard Feynman, an extraordinary intellect who revolutionized modern physics. And he helped design the atomic bomb, not a good deal, but nonetheless you had to be smart, created a Nobel Prize-winning theory of quantum electrodynamics, became a skilled safecracker. I don't know what that means. I would assume that I don't know. And exposed the flaws which had led to the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster. Look, he was a brilliant scientist long before he sampled marijuana and the LSD while in his mid-50s, but he did claim to have learned from the mind-expanding experiences. But I don't take any of that stuff. You don't take any of that stuff. You shouldn't take any of that stuff. But then again, we don't know nothing. And if I saw what they saw, I wouldn't know what it was that they saw. So, the point I guess I'm trying to say is, I'm glad these guys took what they took, because they saw things that helped them explain for the rest of us what is reality outside of the realm of 3 dimensions. Let's look at the next one. A scientific luminary, Kary Mullis. He won the 1993 Nobel Prize in Chemistry for developing a now commonly used technique called the polymerase chain reaction, which allows scientists to quickly and easily duplicate segments of DNA. In his 1998 autobiography, Dancing Naked in the Minefield, Mullis claimed, "I think I might have been stupid in some respects if it weren't for my psychedelic experiences." Here's a guy that you all know, covered this last week, and you're going to be shocked. So be shocked. Another one. Dr. Andrew Weil. What does he say? Possibly the world's best naturopath is a naturopath. He's a Harvard medical graduate, Harvard AB degree in biology, internationally recognized expert on medicinal herbs, mind-body interactions, and alternative medicine. And he's open about his past and present use of illegal substances, claiming, I think I've tried about every drug from chocolate to morphine. Wheel claims that there's an innate need for humans to alter consciousness and that there is no such thing as good drugs and bad drugs, merely that some individuals have good or bad relationships. Well, I mean, that's strong. And to me, everything like that, to me, is bad. And you know, I would think that, you know, that's not a good statement for him to make. But I'm not coming against him, because if he's in that scientific community where his mind would expand to the point where he could help the rest of us, fine, you know. But look, let me show you how deep he was into this. And again, he was so deep, The Natural Mind writes about the advantages of stoned thinking and understanding health and diagnosing illnesses. Now, for professionals, maybe that's true. He's even been honored with having a psychedelic mushroom named in his honor. Psilocybe was discovered and named in 1995. And there it is. That's where you get named after him. See? But he's a very prestigious guy. He'd be on television all over the place. But then take a look at this guy. Here's another guy you know. In the 1880s, cocaine was first extracted from cocoa leaves, and Sigmund Freud was intrigued by the drug and the first to study and use it. I take very small doses of it against depression and against indigestion. Freud was very enthusiastic about the use of cocaine, and in 1884, Freud wrote Exhilaration and Lasting Euphoria Produced by Cocaine. But this is what really interested me. He wrote a letter to his girlfriend. Wait till you see this. Go to the next one, to this letter with his girlfriend. In an oft-quoted letter to his fiancée, he says, "Woe to you, my princess. When I come, I will kiss you quite red and feed you till you are plump. And if you are forward, you shall see who is stronger, a gentle little girl who doesn't eat enough, or a big wild man who has cocaine in his body." Sigmund Freud. Who is a more quoted or more famous than this guy? I never knew that. Did you? Well, you would, because you know you're in that group too, Albert. I mean, so maybe one day Albert will put a picture of himself up here with a little writing, and we'll know what goes on in Bianchi place. Huh? Oh, but I think it's very interesting. Very interesting to me. There are many others. There's Carl Jung. But the question is, what do you do with their brilliance when they say it came from being stoned? Okay? Do you say, oh, we can't listen to you anymore? You can't do that. And I mean, these are just, 4 or 5? They're all over the place. And then you understand that there is a hallucinogenic psychedelic drug, if you would, built into the human brain. And so I have to scream out over and over again, for what? Why? What does somebody want me to see? Who does somebody want me to talk to who's not there? All these brilliant people benefited in some way, and we have as a result of them, because they crossed into another dimension to see and understand the wonders of reality that we have no idea is real. And what about all the Bible writers who saw angels and talked with animals and wrote revelations about the 10-headed monster? Nobody could ever tell me, mythology or no mythology, that the guy that wrote the book of Revelation was not constantly stoned. Or the girl. I don't know who wrote it, but they were stoned. That doesn't mean that the symbols are, I mean, you know, when Jeremy Narby was stoned, he found this connection with the shamans and DNA. So, and even the Bible itself talks about people getting stoned. I always thought it was throwing rocks at people. Didn't you, Ethel? Evidently, it might mean something else. We're going down to get stoned. What we're talking about here, and we might laugh about it, but we're talking about stoned geniuses. There is a terrible danger of using drugs. Terrible. In fact, I think that goes even to prescribed drugs. But we have to, unfortunately. And I don't really know why, but we do, and I do too. But it doesn't take away the question of why so many of these types of people considered as genius use them in order to be open to startling revelations about reality, life, healing. In the early pages of the Bible, it says God is light. The pineal is the light receptor of the body, and it secretes the drug DMT, which opens one to a different dimension, a different universe, one that we called spirit, one that we call the kingdom of light. But we're starting to understand what this all is. All of these things that talk about spiritual encounters is obviously some kind of a hallucinatory adventure. And there's nothing anybody can do about it. They can't remove the DMT from your head. They can't declare your body illegal because it's harboring an illegal substance. Now, while he is speaking of external DMT, many of these people, what happens when the internal DMT becomes active through the pineal gland? And I'll tell you something. You can go drive by church after church after church after church on a Sunday, and you'll see people packed in there, and you know what they're trying to get? They're trying to get an experience. They're trying in a natural way to transcend the human, dimensional, into an extremely alien experience with what they call God or spirits or saints or whatever they are. They name all of these things, which are hallucinatory types of adventures into the realm of what they call God or heaven. And that is why DMT is in the body, so that under the correct circumstances we can transcend the three dimensions and enter into the parallel realm we refer to as spirit. Now, never, in nowhere and in no way does it say you take anything and you ingest something in order to get there. Because the idea is to stimulate the pineal gland in meditation so that it secretes naturally and performs what we would say is God's will, that we see or we hear or we talk. Let's look at DMT in the pineal gland, the connection in the pineal gland of the brain. There's the pineal there, and then DMT is naturally produced in small quantities in the human brain, and it has been hypothesized that DMT is produced in the pineal gland in the brain. The pineal gland appears in the developing human fetus around 49 days after conception. Thus, the supreme question, again, is what part does this hallucinogenic DMT play? Secreted by the pineal gland of the brain, it had to be put there for a reason. It does this for a reason. Behavior that we have to treat with professional care, because if it's allowed to interact with our society, it could prove dangerous. You know, people are saying things. People are talking to people. People are doing things that, you know, you and I say, well, what the heck are you doing? What's going on? Who are you talking to? All this kind of stuff. So we can't relate to that, and we're not constructed in order that we should relate in that realm. But under circumstances when we are seeking within ourselves through the meditative state, this is the call. To transcend from here to there. You couldn't leave a person with dementia alone because you wouldn't know what would happen. You wouldn't know, you know, they're saying things, they're hearing things, they're talking to people, you don't know what they're going to do. But we don't know whether it's maybe because of some brain function or reaction or damage or something that the DMT is flowing in a greater volume than it normally does in the rest of us. Maybe in the way it affected Narby and Strassman. I don't know. These questions aren't asked by people who are not free. I mean, religion would never allow a discussion about this because, you know, it's real and it might be a reality that they would disguise as spiritual, angelic, and all of this stuff. But it's there nonetheless, and all we're saying is this spiritual experience a hallucinogenic high? Religion is the farthest thing from spirituality. It thrives in songs and costumes and stories, but whenever you dare express the nature of the invisible world where reality exists in strange forms, they immediately pull out the cult. Then they begin to wail about devils and demons and all of that kind of stuff. They can never have anything to do with the nature of God, who, they say, created people, but this creator saw fit to equip the human brain with a hallucinogenic drug called DMT. And the only purpose it would have would be to escort someone into a different dimension. Are there UFOs? Are there extraterrestrials? I believe there are. Do you have to take drugs to interact with them? I don't think so. But you must activate the trigger that will release natural DMT into your brain so you will be free to fly into the kingdom of light. It's a natural thing. Sorry. You've got to stimulate the pineal gland of the single eye in order for you to transcend this realm that we live in. And there was somebody who is a lot better known than me who said this. In Matthew 6:22, Jesus said, "If your eye be single, your whole body shall be full of light." He's talking about the pineal gland. Isn't that something? The single eye is the pineal gland, and the Jesus of the Bible says that if you activate it, you're going to be filled with light, and the pineal gland is what secretes the hallucinogenic DMT. What kind of light is he talking about? But we have been raised and trained to listen to people in church sing songs and preach about what's in the Bible, and they preach it to us literally. They talk about people walking on water, talking with snakes, flying up to the sky, two-headed dragons, and they speak of it all literally. And Sunday after Sunday after Sunday, the masses of people file in, check their brains at the door, and contribute to hear someone read mythology to them literally. And yet, when you speak of parallel universes or our other selves living in them, they point you out as some kind of devil or demon or cult or something. But science tells us of the reality of the strange, the reality that more goes on that is bizarre than we can ever imagine. And I say that it's the world that is hidden in the biblical mythology that is revealed only when one activates the single eye in meditation and the DMT throws. Over and over again, I have quoted this educator, Paul Steinhardt, Einstein Emeritus Professor at Princeton University. And this is what he says. Parallel universes were a staple of the Twilight Zone for years. Science fiction writers loved to speculate on the possible other universes which might exist. In one they said Elvis might still be alive, or in another the British Empire might still be going strong. Well, serious scientists dismiss all the speculation as absurd, but now it seems the speculation wasn't absurd enough. Parallel universes really do exist, and they are much stranger than even the science fiction writers dared to imagine. This man is an Einstein Emeritus Professor at Princeton University. If you have any arguments with that statement, please direct them to him. I couldn't, because when he gave me an answer, I would not know what he's talking about. We do not know about the unseen, do we? If we say it's impossible to levitate. Could Ethel levitate? No. Could Joan levitate? No. But maybe they could. And the only reason that we would say something cannot levitate is because we don't know. Religious people from ancient times would suggest something that I am about to show you right now is demonic. That's where religion is today. Just imagine what I am about to show you being seen by people many years ago. There must be demons, there must be devils, or there must be... Now, let us watch this together. Would you get over here and just focus on this, Kathy? Okay? All right. I don't know. Go back. Okay. All right, and now look at this. See? Now we look at this and say, well, gee, it's science, but to some people that would have to be demonic. What's making that thing float in the air? You see? And he does some other things. Well, there you go. There's nothing underneath there. No net. Look, no net. Yeah, a little side action. More side action. And this is the point. See, there are, I mean, look at that. I mean, we live in an electrochemical universe, and there are things that can make things happen that we don't understand. I like this. Thought out. That's it, yeah. See, but just imagine now, if somebody from the Dark Ages, when religions flourished, the people that did that would be killed. They would be demons, say. And yet, what you have just seen is chemical and electrical. And so are we. And also, for those of you sitting here, what you have just seen was the first time we've ever been able to show you a moving picture on this thing. So I think that's an accomplishment of great sorts, you know. The thing is, things happen, and they will happen within us if we will allow them and be obedient to the Jesus teachings. That is the key as to why DMT is created in the body. It provides the person in the body an opportunity to escape the three-dimensional five senses in the same way that something, chemical, I guess, what was it, dry ice or whatever they use? Okay, something like that set this object free of its three-dimensional gravity. See? So things really can happen. And there is that element inside of us, which is a chemical that does that. To escape the three-dimensional five senses body and move into the other realm that everybody goes to church to make contact with, but are actually scared to death of. Now, there's a reason why a drug such as this, and you can shut that off if you want to, is a hallucinogenic, and you can go, when you do, you can go to the next one. But there's a reason why it's built into the body. It has a purpose. And the only purpose one can fathom for it is to be able to move in another higher dimension, into another universe, into another contact. Once again, only meditation will bring one to that place. And yet it is the hardest thing to do to get people to take it seriously. People will, I'm not going to sit there and listen to music. I'm not going to sit in the dark, and so forth. But let me ask you something. And let me tell you something. It is so foolish for people to ignore meditation when science is continually speaking of its benefits. And that's why I am so thrilled that the meditation is being expanded here through Maxine and Charles, where you can come and in the darkness and with the music experience this freedom and then allow this pineal gland of yourself to be restored. But let's forget DMT for a minute. I mean, maybe you say, well, you know, let's forget the ability to transcend the physical into a parallel existence for a moment. Think of meditation, then, as a productive and good thing for your physical body. First, we're going to hear from neuroscientist Mario Bourgard of the University of Montreal. This is him, and this is what he has to say. Neuroscientist Mario Bourgard of the University of Montreal. Meditative trances or other spiritual states might be similarly beneficial to the mind, brain, and body. Beauregard and others argue, for example, that such mystical mimicry might improve the immune system function, stamp out depression, or just provide a more positive outlook on life. Okay? Want you to see what else he said? And then he goes on to say, if someone has a bad brain, how can they get a good brain? It's really a potential way to rewire our brain. Here is a neuroscientist up in Montreal saying that now, for maybe you don't want, you say, well, I got a good brain, I don't need that. But what about improving the immune system? You know, I'm not bringing people here who don't have any credentials to tell you this kind of stuff. I'm trying to bring you people who are educated people in a particular science and who understand these things and can share them with you. Let me bring you neuroscientist Richard Davidson of the University of Wisconsin. Richard Davidson of the University of Wisconsin at Madison. Davidson and his colleagues, they are 17 people who had received 3 months of intensive training in meditation and 23 meditation novices to perform an attention task in which they had to successfully pick out 2 numbers embedded in a series of letters. The novices did what most people do, the investigators announced in June. They missed the second number because they were still focusing on the first, a phenomenon called attentional blink. In contrast, all the trained meditators consistently picked out both numbers, indicating that practicing meditation can improve focus. Now, as I said, you have an argument, you go talk to him. And then there is a young lady from Harvard University, neuroscientist Sarah Lazar. That's Sarah, and she says, Sarah Lazar of Harvard University, meditation may even delay certain signs of aging in the brain, according to preliminary work by neuroscientist Sarah Lazar of Harvard University and her colleagues. A paper in Neuro Report noted that 20 experienced meditators showed increased thickness in certain brain regions relative to 15 subjects who did not meditate. In particular, the prefrontal cortex and right anterior insula were between 4 and 8 thousandths of an inch thicker in the meditators. The oldest of these subjects boasted the greatest increase in thickness, the reverse of the usual process of aging. So, I mean, if you don't want to meditate for spiritual purposes, why not listen to these people for practical physical purposes? You can improve your focus. You can hold off any types of this degradation of the brain as you get older, and so forth. And I mean, this has come from Harvard and from the University of Wisconsin and from the University up in Montreal. And these are scientists studying this stuff, and they're saying that your brain improves physically through meditation. So it doesn't make any sense not to do it. But you know why people don't do it? Because they do not regard the brain as a physical structure requiring both exercise and rest, just as the rest of the body does. Right? The point being is that meditation is very good for you, not only spiritually, but physically. It's good for your body. It's good for your brain. That's why I was so excited when Maxine and Charles said that here at the Hidden Meanings Conference Center in Forked River, we're going to be having it Sunday nights at 7, Tuesday nights at 7, and the last Friday of the month at 7. So here's an opportunity to come. And there's no instruction. You just sit, relax, and allow the sounds and that darkness to just envelop you and do what it does naturally according to the scientists such as Sarah Lazar of Harvard University. Okay? It stimulates the pineal gland of the brain as well as other things, obviously. And I reinforce for you, and I hope that the statements, I mean, if we had Sarah Lazar of Harvard University, Mario Bogard up in Montreal, and Mr. Davidson from Wisconsin saying that you should meditate for the safety of your brain and your body, maybe this next guy will be helpful too, okay? This one is named Jesus. Many of you in Christian circles know of him. But he said what you have to do to be in good shape is seek first the kingdom of God. Well, it's a religious thing, he's saying. But in other words, you want to do that, right? You follower of Jesus, right? Well, he says, look for the kingdom of God first. Don't do anything else before you do that. Okay. Now what he said, hell, he identified where you can find it. It's within you. Say, it's within you. The kingdom of God is within you. Now, here's another one that I took in a lot of sequence, but in 1 John 1:5 in the Bible, it identifies that God is light. So he's telling you, you've got to look for the kingdom of God. You've got to look within yourself because that's where it is. And so what you will be looking for is light. See? Now look what he says next. Matthew 16. If your eye be single, that's in meditation, your whole body will be full of light. See? So here is Jesus following up on these scientists saying, hey, what they're telling you is right. The creation, God, is within you. God is light. And if you stimulate the pineal gland, your whole body shall be full of light. Okay? And then a warning to those, and so many in Christianity should take this and heed to it. It's in Luke 11:52. You have taken away the key of knowledge. You did not enter within yourselves, and others that were entering in, you hindered. Now there it is. There's the reasons why you should take part in meditation. And by goodness gracious, you know, we spend the millions of dollars on the doctors, and they're wonderful, and we spend millions of dollars on the insurance and all that stuff. This is free. Even you come here to do it, it's free. We don't take any collections up when we do meditation. Because there's some things that are above, you know, collections. And I don't know what else to do, but I've quoted you the scientists, and a lot of religious people say, wow, that's science, this is spirit. Well, there's your spirit. And he said the same thing as the scientist said. So if you are coming from a Christian perspective and claim to be a follower of Jesus, what more do you have to have said to you to impress you to meditate? How clear must it be? And Jesus' meditation instructions not only will be good for your body and brain as the scientists have taught, but will take you to that level of existence that you did not know before. You've been going to church since you could walk looking for this, and it's inside of you all the time, and you have to turn your attention away from churches and to inside to the temple where all of this goes on. Because God has built into the brain the pineal gland that secretes this DMT, which will enable you to see things that others cannot see. That's why Jesus said they look and look, but they don't see. They listen, but they don't hear. Because you can't in this dimension. We've changed all of this stuff, all of this good stuff, into rules and regulations, and whether homosexuals and all of this stuff, and don't wear pants if you're all this crazy stuff. I mean, let's be reasonable. In order to see the things of God, you must be able to see things that are not there. And how are you going to do that? God has provided the brain with the chemical needed for the physical body to do just that. DMT, secreted by the pineal gland. Look even into Bible scripture. Do you remember the old scripture? Jacob was wrestling with an angel. Was he really wrestling with another person, or was he hallucinating? Was he seeing something that nobody else could see, but it was extremely important? Something was happening in another dimension or parallel universe, and I'll show you why I say that. Here's a picture of Jacob wrestling with the angel. What's going on here? Well, I'll tell you how we know what's going on here. Because of all the things we've discussed tonight about DMT and the pineal and hallucinations and spiritual visions and all this stuff. This is how we know. And Jacob called the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face. I mean, how come nobody else knows this? Whoever told you that? But it's true. Something God has given to you to allow you to see the things that you've gone to church all your life to hope to see. But as Jesus has told you, those things are located not inside of a church, but inside of you. Look there before you pick up any Bibles or do anything else. That's what happened in this particular situation to whoever wrote this. The pineal. Even the word then spelt a little differently, but the place of God is the pineal. There's an interesting website titled DMT, Moses, and the Quest for Transcendence, and it's a website written by a guy named Cliff Pickover. Isn't it strange how names, Pickover, Pickover something. But he speaks of the secretion of DMT into the brain and what can occur. Let's take a look. That's Cliff. As a metaphor, consider infrared goggles. Now we're talking about DMT coming into the brain through meditation. A person leans on a tree. At night, we don't see the person. Put the goggles on, and a new reality results. A truer reality, and we see the man. Similarly, is it possible that our brain is a filter, and the DMT is like slipping on infrared goggles, allowing us to perceive a valid reality that is inches away and all around us? You see? But, well, I would tell you 99 9/10% of people, Christian people, a lot of other people will say, you don't want to get involved, man. Well, stop going to church then. What the heck are you going there for? Ridiculous. Now what else he says? There's Cliff. Oops, wrong, but put the next one up there. Is it possible that some of our human ancestors produced more DMT than we do today? For example, many of the ancient Bible stories describe prophets with DMT-like experiences. Maybe this is why the ancients seemed so in touch with God and with miracles and visions. Maybe Maybe Moses and Jesus had a greater rate of pineal DMT production than most. But this is interesting. When I asked Rick Strassman, we talked about him earlier, author of DMT, the spirit molecule, about my theory, he responded. And Rick Strassman has a very interesting theory. And I remember you, Charles, were saying one time about people in the old days when they had these experiences and why we don't today, maybe because of so much electricity in the air, so much signals of all kinds of radio signals and everything. Well, Rick Strassman makes a very interesting, I didn't even know you put that on. Rick Strassman makes a very interesting statement. I'm not familiar with a specific theory that we made more DMT in the old days than now, but are you familiar with James' idea of bicameral mind, that people routinely hallucinated until the connections between our hemispheres got evolved out for whatever reason? I don't think hemispheric connections would support his idea as much as might higher levels of endogenous DMT. If indeed we made more DMT in the past, this may have to do with the increase in artificial light that has come upon us in the last 1,000 years or so. Very interesting there, you know. And of course, knowing that the pineal gland closes when there's light and opens in the darkness. So where he is saying that, you know, there is so much light. If you live in New York City or someplace like that, you know, what's going to happen? It's the same reason you can't see the stars. We can't see the stars around here because of the lights from New York and the lights from all over the place, Philadelphia, whatever. You can't see them. There's so much artificial ground light that it makes seeing the higher light very difficult. You go to Montana, where there's limited artificial ground light, and the whole sky becomes a cathedral. There's stars, and, you know, they call it the big sky country. Well, there's more to come on this. But for the time being, spend some time turning off the lower light and open yourself to the higher light. And let me again tell you that you'll be able to come here at the Hidden Meanings Conference Center on Route 9 in Forked River Village Green Shopping Center on Sunday nights at 7 p.m., on Tuesday nights at 7 p.m., and looking at things again, because it is really difficult to collect and hold in our minds all of these things, and yet this is extremely important as to the nature of ourselves. Last week we looked at a subject that one can only consider as bizarre, yet natural and reasonable. And namely, are people who claim to have a spiritual or sometimes visionary experience under the influence of a hallucinogenic drug, you know. Now, of course, that's enough to get a lot of the people, you know, running out of the monasteries and all of these things. But it's different because we're talking about something that is naturally built in to us as human beings. Come on in. Just walk right in and make yourself comfortable and just sit down and worry about that. In addition, we discussed what part a hallucinogenic drug might play in mental conditions in which people are considered to have dementia or schizophrenia. And in addition to that, we looked at the number of scientists who have taken hallucinogenics in order to understand the workings of the subatomic invisible world that we in reality inhabit, but really don't know that it's there. Two contemporary scientists in particular that we looked at were Rick Strassman, who is an MD, and Jeremy Narby, who is an anthropologist. Both authored books that brought to light the involvement of hallucinogenics, or drugs, if you wish, in life experiences that open an understanding and reality beyond what we consider normal. It's a very touchy subject to discuss. It really is, because there's so much trouble with drugs and young people, and you never, ever want to put such a thing in a positive light. And of course, we're not, because what I'm talking about here is something that is naturally secreted into the brain by a gland. But anyhow, we take a look at Rick Strassman, and he authored the book DMT, The Spiritual Module, a doctor's revolutionary approach into the near-death experiences and mystical experiences. And Jeremy Narby wrote The Cosmic Serpent, DNA and the Origins of Knowledge. Now, both actually took mind-enhancing drugs. Now, but see, that's different than, people on the street or whatever. We're talking about professional people who are seeking something outside of the realm of the natural. They took these in order to see for themselves the bizarre world that exists right next to us. And in many instances is more real, in essence, than the one we see. Rick Strassman, on your left, over here, this is Rick Strassman, he opens up for discussion the possibility that it is the secretion of this drug DMT into the brain that brings a person into contact with higher realms, higher alien realms, if you mean. In other words, what he is saying is that his position is that is the DMT that is secreted by the pineal gland in the brain that is responsible for people having these exotic visionary experiences, what they call spiritual, heavy-duty spiritual experiences. Now, Jeremy Narby worked in the Amazon with shamans to determine how they could know which plants to combine to make healing medicines, which they do, and he took this ayahuasca, or ayahuasca, whatever. And he wrote this book because he had visions of winding stairs and serpents and twisted things and all of this, and came to the conclusion that it represented the DNA structure. And so then Jeremy Narby, in his book, The Cosmic Serpent, said what he is convinced of is that it is the DNA in these plants and the ayahuasca that tells the DNA in the shaman how to do this. So we looked into this because of the fact that what is considered a hallucinogenic illegal drug, DMT, is naturally produced in the human brain. It forms the basis of the ayahuasca that Narby ingested and is the center of Rick Strassman's book. So quickly I wanted to go over things and some things, and then I'll have something really interesting to show you. But this is the summary definition of DMT, dimethyltryptamine.